Anything interesting that's going to be left on this line is going to be in these abandoned and overgrown sections. Perhaps with a bit more dedication I would hack my way through, but for today I think I'll let that go. Anyway, this track alongside the line is perfectly adequate, and there is the track bed just here, look. Again though, as you can see, its uneven nature suggests that this has been infilled, and in fact, yes, of course, the bridge parapet would tell us that the track bed was quite a few feet below. What we have today is this rather attractive avenue of trees. None of which are particularly old. I suspect none of these were here when the line was, and in fact, looking at the stakes by the trees, you can see that these trees have been planted recently enough for the stakes to still be there, and they're flourishing, and very nice it is to see too. So I've just stepped to the left of the avenue and into the field, and as you can see, our friendly posts are here. Telling us that the route of the line is just a few yards to our right there. And indeed the line continues in this direction for another half mile or so down towards the dip in the land at the far end of this field. Just here, on the track bed, the site has been taken over for industrial use. There are no permanent buildings on the track bed, but there's a lot of, in fact, it's a Portaloo hire company. So if anybody's caught short, this is the right place to stop. Quite a few light industrial buildings just on the other side of the fence there. The route of the line remains clear, albeit overgrown of course. But there have been no permanent barriers since, I was just about to say since Itchen Abbas, but interestingly, although the estate has been built over, the actual route of the line, I think, is still there. I think the houses, such as they are, sit either side. Now here is another occupation bridge. Again, the line has been filled in, as you can see. We're in the vicinity of Itchen Stoke Manor. I'm just going to cross the line from one side to the other, because we can see here where the rubble used to infill the line has left a few larger stones. There's obviously a rubble from a demolished structure of some kind. And the line presses on in that direction there. Okay, the infield track bed here is now a cabbage patch. And there, I think, is Itchen Stoke Manor. With a rather fun looking tree house. I wish I'd had one like that when I was young. So, these oaks form the right-hand boundary of the old line, and how do I know that? Because there are the posts, the right-hand posts. So now we are pretty much on the track bed, but walking over the top of what was once a cutting, I suspect, and I think we might be coming onto the level of the track bed itself in just a couple of 100 yards. Trees in the far distance. There's the tower of Alresford Church. So when the line closed, it finally closed in February 1973, there were four outcomes. The first outcome was to mothball the line, to simply leave it effectively, all the way of course from Alton to Winchester. Leave everything in place, just don't do anything with it, let it slowly decay. With the idea that there was a possibility of a reopening within 10 years. Now, I don't think there was a possibility. The economics, regardless of what people say, I think the gap between profit and loss was so great that, you know, the discounting of a few tickets or the impact of a few missed connections, I don't think was going to change the picture. The second outcome would have been to lift all of the infrastructure, track, signalling, sidings, ballast, and leave the route intact under perhaps the ownership, novate the land from the BRB brackets residual to the Hampshire County Council for use as a bridleway, permitted right of way, whatever. And again, with the possibility that one day the line could be reopened. The third outcome was to assist a new body, the Mid Hants Railway, Winchester Railway Limited, whoever won, to gradually acquire the line in stages, so they could buy what they could afford. The rest, they would be given a period of time in which to raise the money. And the fourth, and in my opinion the most pointless, least profitable, most undesirable, short-sighted outcome was to regard the line as abandoned forever and to sell off the bits, albeit tiny little pieces of that route for which there may have been a buyer. In other words, the pieces that were closest to a road, where maybe a single dwelling, perhaps two dwellings, could be built. And that simply makes, from an 8-mile line, that 7 miles, 7 furlongs, probably 7.75 furlongs, becomes useless. The only people who can possibly buy it are the farmers who are in a monopoly position. If they don't buy it, they can use it if they wish anyway, because nobody else can. And that really, of course, the fourth option, is the one that the civil servants who are paid to think about these things, within the guidelines set by their political masters, that's what they need to come up with. And for all of their so-called experience, it's the fourth option that they chose. And the reason why I'm able to walk almost all this route, bar a few yards, is because of the short-sightedness, the lack of vision of the civil servants back in the early 70s. I alluded to, I mentioned Lord Beeching. I don't hold him as being the most responsible, the most guilty party. There are civil servants, I think Alfred Sherman was one, Serple may have been another, who were responsible for the short-term hacking up of getting rid of what could be got rid of. They were the ones responsible for tearing up the lines, creating a glut in the scrap market, which devalued the price of scrap. All of this scrap was being dumped on the market at a time when the market couldn't absorb it. So it's not even as if they were making money from ripping up the track, because they weren't. They were simply depressing the market. There was no commercial sense in any of what was done. Still, where are we? Halfway between Itchen Stoke and Alresford, and we've just dipped into the valley of the Itchen, and for the first time the Itchen is about to cross under the route of the line. If we can see it, I'll certainly try and film it, and I hope that we get a glimpse of the little River Arle as well, the little tributary which comes in just to the left of the line, and also the Candover Brook. Anyone who knows this area knows the Candovers stretching away to the north. So let's see if we can see one or all of those in the next few minutes. So here's a little farm bridge, rather attractive little bridge. Of course, it hasn't served any purpose now for many, many years. There's the embankment, the River Itchen will just be a little bit further along, so I'll scramble back up onto the top there and continue. Okay, looking back, there's that little bridge. Here's our way forward. The way here is clear all the way into Alresford now. Clear as in the sense there are no structures. And this would make a lovely footpath. And a bridleway, of course. Cycle path as well. Although I wouldn't be in favour of giving this over to Sustrans. Because I don't think in the West Country they've shown themselves to be particularly willing to live with other people who may also want to use the route of the old lines that they've been entrusted with. I'm thinking of perhaps around the Bodmin area. The way is getting a little clearer, and looking down I believe I've seen the Candover Brook. Yes. Here. Another beautiful chalk stream flowing in from the north. It rises, in view of the volume of water, it rises not far away, less than 10 miles. But you look at the volume of water there, fast flowing, clear, probably only a couple of feet deep, but loaded. That will be loaded with trout. And in fact there is a trout farm just the other side. Let's have a look over here. And a watercress bed. What else would you expect? The watercress beds require a shallow, constant flow of fresh water. So if you see there's an empty bed there, let's see if the camera will pick up the, slowly focusing. You just see that's just a couple of inches deep, but flowing over gravel. And the watercress is simply planted into the gravel. There's a bed just behind, there you can see, there, just starting to grow. Simply plopped into the gravel, and it gets its nutrient from the water. Hydroponics. There we go. So, there's the Candover. At least I think it's the Candover. If it turns out to be the Itchen, I'll probably have to retract everything I've just said. I don't think it's the Itchen because it's pretty much bearing away to the north, whereas I know that the Itchen eventually will rise to the south of where we are here. The next few yards will tell us anyway. Okay, we're now on possibly the highest point of this large embankment. Looking down, I don't know if you can tell, very wet down there. There's standing water and a mass of dead trees, vegetation. Pretty impassable, I would think. I dare say a close inspection will show that water's flowing, because you definitely do not get stagnant water in these parts. Every drop of water that you see is flowing, even if it appears to be in ponds. It's the nature of this chalk landscape. The other interesting thing is that there is a clear and well-trodden footpath. Not heavily used, but used enough to make the way fairly straightforward. What do we see here? Now this is another stream, and I think this is the Itchen. I think that was the Candover that we saw previously. And as you look here, the river, and there goes a coot just scuttling across. I can see how the river is in a kind of a horseshoe. It runs just a couple of hundred yards to the north, around there, and then comes back and eventually crosses again a few hundred yards up, obviously going in the opposite direction this time. But in between, the River Arle joins, and so I'm hoping that we'll see the little River Arle coming in. The Arle is even shorter than the Candover Brook, but the volume of water it carries is quite astonishing. If you walk through Alresford, the river just runs behind the houses, behind the high street. Fast flowing, clear, again loaded with fish, and by the time it reaches the Itchen, just probably 5 miles from where it rises, it's a huge volume of water, all bubbling out of the ground. Lots of springs actually in the bed of the river itself, but also lots of very attractive little springs that you can find. You can go exploring, and you come across streams rising in the most unlikely places. Really quite astonishing. Very seasonal too. You can never predict whether a spring will be flowing or not until you get there. And now there's a well-worn path joining from the left here, running down there, obviously down by the Itchen, and I have a feeling that this path will continue into Alresford itself. I'm hoping we will actually be able to walk straight onto the headshunt of the Mid Hants Railway. We shall see. Okay, we're getting quite close now, and you might be able to hear the traffic. We're getting fairly close to where the little B3047 joins with the A33, or what I guess was the A33 before the Alresford bypass was put in. This is a really pleasant walk, and I do hope that the County Council decide to turn this into as much of a long distance footpath to Winchester as they possibly can. As suspected, there's the Itchen, as you see on the far side of the Oxbow, and of course the water now is flowing from right to left, and will very shortly dip under us on this high embankment. And interestingly, suddenly the track bed becomes very difficult to walk past. Not quite sure why anybody would have heaved up the ground here, but they have, and it's a little bit of an exploration needed to just get round here. Lots of hawthorn and lots of honeysuckle creeping high into the canopies of these trees. I don't normally like sycamore, but I have to say that here it's the perfect tree. It's light, it lets lots of air, sunlight through its branches, it's not too dense. It enables an understory to develop beneath it very generously, and in its place here alongside field maple and occasional beech, it's the perfect tree. Okay, there you might see just on the edge of the field there, that is the A33 as was, and you'll hear the noise of traffic getting steadily louder as we walk across. There is, as before, virtually no archaeology to speak of. I'm just pausing here because you can see the river quite tranquil here, flowing past in the dappled sunlight, and this magnificent sycamore, which has branched right down to the root level, so it's effectively a colony. I suspect it is a single tree though, but quite a majestic tree, which is very unusual, I think, for sycamores. I wouldn't often say those two words together, but in the right place, this tree is the king of all it surveys. So here we are on the bridge itself. There. Drivers will not be used to seeing ahead looking at them from up here, I know that, because the way through is very difficult. There's a little, I think that's a crab apple. Beautiful blossom. So there should be a little crop of crab apples by September. Let's just have a quick look the other way, into Alresford itself. There we go. And the Itchen crosses right next to this bridge, although you barely see it. There's evidence that somebody's been here hacking away. For what purpose? Probably to stop it falling onto the road. Interesting that there weren't any of those fierce gates. There is some barbed wire here, but the gates that barred the way back at Itchen Abbas and beyond, nowhere to be seen. Pleased to report. Now, we are perhaps half a mile now from the headshunt, and although there is a clear path again, I'm surprised how overgrown it is. I thought that dog walkers, just as at Spring Vale at the other end of the walk, would have taken advantage of this. So I am a little surprised. It is starting to open up a bit now. And there is the Itchen. Up ahead I can see a shed. I wasn't expecting to see that. As far as I know, this is not owned by anyone, so I don't quite know what to make of that. Okay, I can fully understand people living next to the line here taking advantage, because who else would? You know, if I had this at the end of my garden, I would certainly be out here. I'm not quite sure what I'd be doing, but perhaps tending to it. And I think perhaps one or two of the residents have done the same, and I wouldn't hold that against them. I don't quite know what this shed's going to be about yet. As we get closer, I'll take a look. Well, it's a stable next to it. Perhaps the only surviving linesman's hut. So somebody stables horses down here. Probably not technically, legally. But meanwhile, pleased to say that we have found the original track bed again. Just up ahead of us is a bridge carrying one of the minor roads, but the way is clear. There. Heading into a deepish cutting. Apart from all the litter, there is a short period of more cutting, and then another boundary across the line, which I'd like to take a look at. Okay. This steep little cutting is the counterpart of the one just to the east of Alresford station. During its heyday, these sides would have been very steep. They would have been bare chalk, I think, but in the intervening 40 years, there's been a lot of minor landslides. But the track bed here is very clear and still flat. I could almost imagine that I would see the indentations of the sleepers, but I think that's just my eyes playing tricks. I really don't know who owns this land now. There would be a suspicion that it would be something to do with the dwellings ahead, but I don't know, I'm not so sure. I do know that this little cutting, looking back to the west there, we are in the middle of Alresford now, but you'd never know it, of course. This little cutting is a bit of a sun trap and very secluded. There's no litter, nothing to suggest that the local kids make much use of it. Of course that could be because there's a Rottweiler at the end waiting to bite my leg off. One way or another I will know in a couple of seconds. This is a yard of some sort. And will require a detour. There's something of value stored here. And here we see two properties on the track bed, and on the other side two more. One with the name, where are we? Whistle Stop. That is at the far end to Springvale, another single barrier to reopening, any possibility of reopening the line. And here is something quite interesting as we reach the end. We're now in Perins School. We're now walking on top of what was, of course, once a cutting. This land was owned by the Mid Hants until the mid-80s, I think it was, when a financial crisis loomed, a cash flow problem, and the railway was desperate to come up with any measure that would secure the line's future. As you may remember, the extension to Walton was funded by loans and overdrafts, the interest payments of which were crippling the line. There were a number of ideas put forward. I actually put one forward myself. I had the idea that the small meadow that the railway seems to own by accident near Ropley could have been sold off in square metre chunks as a souvenir, if you like. The square metres would have had no obvious value as land, but would have been the kind of ideal present for an expat. My idea was that the field, which I think is about 5 or 6 acres, I'll leave you to work out how many square metres that is. I would estimate probably something like 10,000 perhaps. They would have been sold at £25 a lot, and of course you get a certificate of ownership and everything that goes with it. That was my idea. It was rejected. I don't know if it would ever have worked. I do know other people have done something similar, and I know that they have, for various reasons. I think people have done it as an obstruction to make it difficult to compulsorily purchase land. But anyway, what was decided was that this strip that we're walking on would be purchased by Perins School, and so it was, and the line was saved. I'm not quite sure where this path is going to take me, but it does say it's a permitted footpath, and I'm hoping I can get back close to the route of the line in a minute. I'll soon find out, won't I? School activities going on, after school activities, I have to say. Nice to see it happening. And I'm even more pleased to say it's rugby. Excellent. Well done, lads. Okay, you can hear the sounds of the rugby match in the background now, and this is pretty much the end of our journey, because just beyond this fence, over the long jump bit, which I'll walk around, is the headshunt of the Watercress line. They have had their problems. So, looking back there, you can see there's the line of shrubs that we were walking alongside a minute ago, and some 8 miles distant is the junction of the London and Southampton railway line. It's been an interesting journey for me. I wanted to know what was left of the old line, and of course the answer is virtually nothing, a few bridges. But I also wanted to know how much was obstructing any possible reuse in the future as a through route, whether it's for trains, for horses, bicycles, humans. The line will never reopen. I'd like to think, though, that in the not too distant future it will be possible to get off the train at Alresford and to walk the rest of the way to Springvale and thence via some footpath or other into Winchester itself. That would be, for me, the best compromise, the best of what I won't say a bad job, but a sad job. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little trek. If you have, perhaps I might undertake others. There's plenty more to do. Perhaps the next one could be the Meon Valley. Cheerio.